Hello, and welcome to this first edition of EMS Now Up Close for 2021. I'm Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and my guest today is Markus Aschenbrenner, the new CEO of Zollner Electronics. So, welcome, Happy New Year, congratulations on your new job. Markus, it's good to see you again. Why don't I begin by allowing you to introduce both yourself and Zollner for the benefit of the audience?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, thanks for the invitation, Eric. It's a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sorry, but I have to correct you. I'm not the new CEO of the company because, as you know, Johann Weber retired from his CEO role at the end of last year. And we choose not to have a new CEO. We said, okay, speaker of the board, which is Ludwig Zollner, which is the eldest son of our founder. And I'm a member of the board, and I'm responsible in the board for the electronics portion of our business, which is 2/3 of the company. So that's my role, just to...
Oh, thank you for that. I didn't realize.
Don't worry, don't worry. Yeah, talking about Zollner, Zollner is a global EMS player with 11,000 people working for us in 18 locations around the world. We have around 1.5 billion in euros revenue a year. We are serving many different industries, branches throughout the year, and that's one of our strategic topics that we want to serve as, or we want to be diversified, because that helps exactly in the situation as we saw last year in with the COVID situation and as we go into the new year. So that's a strategic approach. As I said, 1.5 billion, a family-owned company. We are not traded on the stock exchange. All the shares are held by the family, which makes our life in the executive board a little bit easier because we don't have to go to our shareholders on a quarterly basis and telling them stories. So it's easier to stick to long-term strategies, to long-term goals. And I think that's one of the main differentiators that we have to our big peers in the EMS world, because we are really a long-term thinking, reliable EMS partner out there. I think this is how we are recognized. And as I already said, to my role, I'm a member of the board. I'm responsible for the whole electronics portion within Zollner, which is about 2/3 of the whole company in terms of the revenue that we generate. And in my experience, I already had been with Zollner 22 years. In the past, and I moved out for 5 years. I've been on the board of one of our customers, a test and measurement company based in Berlin. And since the beginning of 2019, I'm back. And we had then that transition of the last 2 years from Johann Weber to myself. So I took over responsibilities beside the CEO role. And that was a good thing to have it also for 2 years, because that gave us enough time to inform our customers, to inform our partners out there, to really get a good transition on the path. And so that was the task for the last 2 years. Since starting this year, I'm in full responsibility.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that gives great confidence to all of your partners and suppliers, right? To continuity, and that things won't be changing too drastically.
Yeah, that was a major thing, and that was also the lucky thing that Johann Weber, who was our CEO until the end of last year, and now being a member of the supervisory board, that he is still within the company, not in the day-to-day business, in the technical day-to-day business, but as a member of the supervisory board. He's a good challenger for us if we talk about strategic approaches, about strategic moves, with the experience that he has throughout all his professional career. That helps a lot exactly in those discussions.
Yeah, it's interesting. I pulled this quote. It was from Ludwig Zollner. That when Mr. Weber was moving to supervisory board, he says, "Nothing will change in terms of our corporate values and our orientation. We are and will remain a family-owned company that operates soundly, focuses on customers, and is constantly developing technologically."
Right.
Summary and kind of
That's a good summary, and that is exactly what I meant with being a reliable partner in a very, changing, dynamic environment. That was one of our main topics that we wanted to express with that move, because that's exactly what we are and who we are.
Yeah, good. Well, listen, I was hoping to speak and we will today talk about both looking back at 2020 and looking 2021 beyond. But before we do that, I'd like to begin the discussion by maybe speaking to you, allowing you to speak about the legacy of Johann Weber during his tenure as CEO of Zollner, and now his transfer to the supervisory board. So what would you like to say about the impact he has had on the company?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a very strong impact on the company, because with him, that was exactly the start. So he was in the company for 43 years in different roles in the company, and since since the year 1000 change as the CEO role, and with him, all the electronics manufacturing started basically in our house. Before that, Zollner was manufacturing coils, transformers, and that kind of stuff. And with him was really the start of the electronics manufacturing services in our house. So he drove exactly this development in our house, and as you know, he gave many interviews, was also a leading member at ZVE in the German electronics community, and as such, he was a constant motor driver of new technologies, new steps, new strategies in our house, and that was his main role over the last years, decades.
Yeah.
Of course, that's something that we need to deal with now, and that we have to continue in a manner which is likely for our.
Yeah, good. And now, and as he moves to the supervisory board now, what do you anticipate his ongoing influence will be on the company?
Yeah, we have. So there's regulatories that we have to fulfill as a German company, as a shareholder company. So there's regular board meetings that the executive board has with the advisory board. But that's something which there's a fixed agenda. There's fixed topics that we talk about that are presented there. But the more important role, I think, is the role as somebody who is challenging us in the executive board and who is an advisory to us. So when we think about new strategies, about maybe new countries or new technologies to add, such kind of things, and you need somebody there who's not in the day-to-day business, because the day-to-day business, how that is. You have customers on the phones, you have suppliers, you have delivery issues, whatever it is there. But this is something where you need somebody who has the knowledge, who has the past, who knows how that business works, and who can ask interesting questions in order to challenge, is that the right decision that you made or not? And is that the right strategy moving forward or not? And that will be the more important role of him in the advisory.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Well, let's talk about the year that just finished, and then before we look forward, most interesting, challenging year, whole globe in all respects, in all industries. But how would you assess the overall performance of the electronics manufacturing industry in 2020?
So overall, 2020 was a very challenging year. So I think if I look at the whole electronics industry, I think the first quarter was more or less as it was originally planned to move forward, And then came the hit from the COVID crisis, which first came into China and then into the rest of the world. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry, for sure, because nobody knows exactly how that's moving on or how it's going on. What are the real demands which are out there looking forward into the future? And if I look at our performance, of course, we had also been hit by the crisis. So the first quarter was as planned, a little bit better than planned, to be honest. So it was a very good start into the year. And then, of course, we have been hit first with our Chinese facility in Taichung, which fortunately was during the Chinese New Year, and right 2 weeks after the Chinese New Year, we had been, or the permission was there that could restart. So we had just been hit by 2 weeks, in fact. And since that, China went very well. But from end of March, beginning of April, the whole thing hit in Europe. Especially in industries like the automotive industry and the commercial aviation industry, that have been the two industries which have been hit the most here in our house. Which the worst quarter was the second quarter in terms of the downturn in revenue that we saw. But starting with the third quarter, we already had first signals that it was moving up, and going from midst of third quarter in the fourth quarter, we had been back on the original plan, even performed better than the original plan. So the whole outcome in terms of the revenue that we generated last year was that we hit the same revenue numbers as we did in 2019, which was, in my opinion, which is a very good result that we made. And I really want to thank our people, our staff there, because of course we had to react very fast and very quick in order to make those changes that we saw in the demand and in the different industries happening. And our people really went very well through that year. And this is how we made that result of nearly hitting the same revenue since that we had 2019, which is, in my opinion, a very good result.
Yeah.
Compared to what I hear in the industry, also compared to our peers, a very good result.
Yeah. I spoke with, did a webinar with Dieter Weiss on it last week, and he was talking about just the numbers in Europe and saying overall Europe would be down, I think it was 3.2% was his number for 2020, which he said, considering the type of year it was, that's probably not that bad, right? So considering everything. So, you made an interesting distinction there at the beginning too about, it started normally the year because, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, there's certain issues within the industry that were probably going to play out over the course of 2020 were COVID never to have happened, right? And so I'm wondering, what those are, because I'm thinking like a supply chain, the material supply chain challenges within the industry. They always begin there at the beginning of the year with the Chinese New Year and the shutdown, the capacity issues within that. So what was the impact of, say, the supply chain challenges that Zollner was facing during the year?
Last year, that was really weird because you said there's also always an impact in the first quarter due to Chinese New Year, which is obviously there for sure, Eric, and I agree with that. But what we saw, especially in the March-April timeframe with the Chinese supply base, that of course, according to the direction that the Chinese government gave, there were many suppliers there changing a little bit their appetite to take on orders from outside China. So what we saw is that there were some of our suppliers there who said, "Okay, sorry, I cannot ship into Europe or cannot ship into Zollner because we want to first settle our demand that we have in China, fighting the COVID crisis." And that was one challenge. And the second one was that we had then is when the closures of different countries or different sites had been due to the COVID crisis, like in Malaysia or in Latin America, which hit a little bit. So that was then the other topics that we faced. But due to our good relationships and also to the forecasting that we do into our supply chain, there were some incidents, but they didn't hit us that hard that I heard things were hitting in some other areas. So we could manage it, and we finally made the shipments that we needed to make, and especially then in the strong third and fourth quarter, that was really a challenge to make that happen.
The pandemic has had a profound effect on the EMS industry, and what we've been talking about for the last many months is that it's been an accelerator of certain trends, and the two probably prominent ones being in digitalization and automation.
Yeah, definitely.
How do you view those issues as they apply within the EMS?
I think that will be an add-on driver, that those initiatives, which I think many companies already have started, but not have that hard in the past, that they are now forced even harder. Mm-hmm. Same in our house. So we used the time which we had in the second and third quarter, that we sit together and said, okay, what is really the needed things that we need to do fast in terms of digitalization, in terms of automation. And we put together 9 core topics that we are following since that on a very tight schedule in order to see, do we make the right progress or not. And you might have heard from the news that we bought a share also in an AI institute in order to also use and utilize those possibilities which are there. So this is one part of those 9 topics initiatives that we started with, where we already reacted and where we already are driving those initiatives. So yes, it will be an accelerator, I'm pretty sure, and also in our house we are focusing that very much right now.
No. And let's kind of shift that to that forward-looking, view of the industry now. As you're looking at 2021, how does this year look for the industry and for Zollner?
First of all, what I see right now, and I'm talking a lot to customers, especially over the last 2 to 3 months, in order to see what is their forward look, and what I hear out of nearly all of those meetings and phone calls is that there's a lot of uncertainty in the whole industry. So nobody knows exactly what's going on. The positive thing is when you see how the demand signal go up once the crisis seems to be a little bit softer, as we saw in the third and fourth quarter last year, how fast the industry is coming back and demand is coming back. That's for me a positive thing. And I think that once we make the first quarter in this year, that exactly the same thing will hit maybe in the second, or latest in the second half of next year, second quarter or latest second half of next year. So that's for me the positive thing there. But as I said, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Nobody knows exactly what's coming on, and that's also the variation that we see in the demand signals and in the forecast that we have right now. And the second thing, which I think will be a challenge this year, is the shortage situation in the electronic components world, not just on semiconductors, but also in the passive components. That will be a second hard thing to deal with, and a challenge to manage, especially if the demand is that fluctuating and if you see those big ups and downs in the demand signal. So this will be the key things. In terms of planning for our house, so as I said, we are 1.5 billion in revenue, and we had the same numbers in 2020 that we have seen in 2019, and what we plan so far is an increase in revenue of 5 to 7% this year. Okay. So we really look positive into 2020. Yeah, this year. Beside all the COVID situation and the shortage situation in the component supply chain.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, that uncertainty certainly isn't good for business, regardless of.
It is not. It is not, and you have also the political issues which are there. So, as you know, in the US, pretty well right now. So that's also not a good sign for business.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, exactly. So within this environment then for this year, as you're looking at this year and as you've assumed your new role, so what initiatives are you focused on? What are your objectives here for the year?
Yeah, as I said, we are driving that digitalization, automation thing. That's one key thing. Of course, to manage the crisis, but we are still in the COVID crisis mode right now, and it won't go away that fast. So that will be also a focus. And then we have a few strategic initiatives that we brought on the table, and also some investments that we are looking forward. Also, what it means. So we will make investments in new buildings in our Chinese facility in Romania. So there's initiatives there. So there's some interesting things that we have on the radar for this year, and but first of all is really managing the COVID situation, managing the supply chain, driving digitalization, automation, and then the other strategic initiatives that we have in front of us.
Yeah, you touched on something. What's always impressed me with Zollner is that your growth has been organic, right? It hasn't been a lot of acquisition activity, and so I'm assuming under that's probably will remain that way, as you just indicated. There's going to be some investment in growth of existing facilities, China and Romania, some expansion, but I don't expect Zollner to go off the reservation, so to speak, and start doing big acquisitions and doing that's just not your nature. You're this.
So I already mentioned before that we made an investment last year in an AI institute. That's a technological driven investment that we do. We're not investing out of growth perspective. So there will be not an investment saying, okay, we buy 200 million in revenue in China or wherever. So that's not our perspective, because we are not the company being having the resources to integrate big other EMS players into our. That's not what we focus. So we will still move along our strategic planning, our long-term visions that we have, but to make acquisitions just of pure growth perspective, that's not what we're looking for.
Right, exactly. And actually, I will get to one of the issues that I find interesting, and again, this came up here recently, is the expectation of more outsourcing by OEMs in Europe in the future. Dita, again with Informa, used the number, I think when I spoke to him last, that about 64% of the OEM's electronic is still done in-house, right? And so that says that as more starts hopefully coming out in the future, that there's an opportunity for growth within, for EMS industries, especially with European OEMs. How do you view that?
I'm pretty sure that Dita is right there, because I'm not sure if the numbers are really that exact right. Is it 64, 65, 70%, which is still made in-house? But what will happen, and I'm pretty sure about that because if you look at the main drivers that all the OEMs have, is also the things of what are new business models that they can drive. How can I use digitalization to get new business models down the road? What all that means, it's you need to invest in new things, in people. So what I'm pretty sure about is that there will be thoughts made about, do we really want to have electronics manufacturing in-house or not? There's a lot of industries, traditional industries, where OEMs still have a lot of manufacturing in-house. And I'm pretty sure that making those fixed costs into variable costs is an initiative which will take place because of the money that those companies need to invest in new technologies or new business models. So I 100% agree what Dieter Weiss is saying there, that we will see continuously outsourcing from OEMs to EMS also in the next decade moving forward. Pretty sure about that.
Yeah. Okay. Another industry initiative that I wanted to ask you about is the whole Industry 4.0, which is, I guess, and what I'd ask is, how would you assess the current state of that initiative within the industry? And what do you think needs to happen in 2021 to really further its adoption and really operationalize the benefits of it?
It's all based about data. You need to have a setup with your machinery, with your software, that you have the data available, that you have them into one data lake, into one data center, and that you can do something with the data. And I think there's still a lot work to be done down the road, because of course everybody claims that he has the systems on board and that he has those data available, but I'm not sure if that's really the case, because if I looked into manufacturing and just if if you look at different manufacturing sites where there's a lot of different machines out there with different years when they have been bought and integrated into manufacturing, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot to do to get those data still out of those machines in order to have them available and to move forward. So one thing is really to have everything connected to a database that you have the data available. That's one thing. And then I think it's important that you make up your mind what your strategy for your company is using those data. So what do you do with those data? What is the business model that you can provide to your customers to use those data, that there's really an advantage for your customers out of those data? It's not just gaining data, you have to do something with those data. And therefore you need to put together your strategy, put together your minds, your thoughts, your ideas in order to say, okay, what business model do I want to drive with those data? And I'm pretty sure that there is a lot of talks about that, but I'm not sure if there's a lot of companies who really have fixed the strategy for exactly what they want to do with the data and how they want to transfer those data to really assets for their customers that their customers can utilize and really want to buy it. So I think there's a lot to do with that. So gaining data, getting them together, have a strategy, and then move forward and execute that strategy. Right.
Yeah. And do you see the responsibility for that coming from the EMS companies themselves, or are you getting some help from the service providers in that respect?
Our way of thinking there is that we want to be an enabler for our customer. So what we do right now is we sit together with our customers saying, hey, what kind of data do you need for your business model, not just now, but also in the future? And what's your perspective on that? And where can we help you in order that you are attractive on the market? This is how we approach our customers in order to see what is the real benefit that we can give our customers with the data that we have in-house. Because if you look at the data that we have all the historical data about their data that they give us in terms of the volumes or the demand signals they have. We have all the supply chain data in our house. We have all the manufacturing data. We have all the test data in our house. We have the service data if we get products back from them in our service and repair centers. So there's really a lot of data that we have. And now it's really the interesting question towards the customers. What's your business model and how can we support you in the future with data that we can generate and that we can give you in a certain format, That's interesting in my opinion.
Yeah, no. And that's interesting because I think about that OEM dynamic, right? And how in the outsourcing, I spoke to an OEM colleague recently for a large unnamed global OEM. And he said, and I asked about these initiatives, and he says, what goes on within their walls, I really don't care about. I want what I ordered done well at cost, and I want a good quality product on the back end, right? So how do you see the OEMs, is it changing now as we get more data and more of this evolves?
That's always depending on who you talk within the OEM spec. If you go towards the purchasing department, that's the answer that you will get. I want to have products with a good quality, on time, with a good price, and that's it, and a good service level. But the question is really, where do they move towards in their own business model, and what is really what they want to do themselves, and where do they need help? What I see changing over the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years is now that OEMs are more open to discuss business models and how we can collaborate in those business models. And that's, in my opinion, the interesting talks that you need to have.
Yeah. So it's, what I hear you saying is that it's becoming less transactional and more strategic as far as those engaged.
It has to be, because otherwise they can't work, Eric, because just, as I said, just gaining data and putting them somewhere doesn't help at all. You need to discuss what can we do with those data and how do the end customers, not just our customers, the end customers really have value with what we generate here. And that's exactly what you need to discuss. And that's a strategic discussion, nothing else,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And also by gathering and the investment that EMS are making in the equipment and the systems to gather all this data, process the data, and improve their manufacturing costs money, right? And it's an industry historically challenged for profitability. So, so I think that strategic partnering with the OEM should be to the benefit of the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
It should be, and it's what I said before, and that's, in my opinion, also a driver for outsourcing. Because if you have exactly those strategic talks, then the OEM has not the fear that, there's a supplier who will take away something from myself. That's not the case. We are an integral partner of their business model, and that's exactly how the view has to be,
Right. No, very good, very good. So what lessons do you bring forward out of 2020 into 2021 and how you attack this industry?
It's not attacking the industry. For me, one of the interesting thing to see in 2020 was, if you have a situation like the COVID situation where everybody is affected in the world, and if you look then into our company, how people are, if a situation like that occurs, how people are willing to take that challenge and to move forward and to overcome the challenge. That was for me one of the most inspiring thing in last year, because what I saw is that our company, came together very strong, and we pulled together in exactly one direction, because everybody wanted to get over that crisis and to get everything together in order that we are prepared for an uplift in the demand signal and in that challenge. And that was for me the inspiring thing. And out of that, I have a lot of power, because to see how a team can move through a crisis, as we said last year, that gives a lot of enthusiasm for the future, because that shows, okay, anything which comes along the way could be managed with a strong team and with exactly that spirit that we saw last year. And that was for me, it's an unusual statement maybe, but that was for me one of the interesting things that I saw in 2020.
Yeah. And that's interesting, because I think one of the issues discussed in the industry is always the human resource issue, finding the workers, and also the skill set of those workers as it's evolving and the industry is transitioning. How do you do that?
Finding the people and the skill set is one thing, but it's always the spirit, and that's the interesting thing. Finding the people with the right spirit. And the EMS industry is a very challenging industry. It's a very demanding industry, an interesting one, because you're talking to many different branches, different industries with different needs and expectations, and that's the challenging thing. So what you need to have in EMS is really the people with the right spirit who exactly know that this is the case, and how do we attack this, and how do we take that challenge and move forward. That's the interesting thing in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and that's well stated, I think, right? That's and I think one of the strengths when I compare EMS, say in the United States versus Europe, you also have more trade schools and internship and apprentice programs to help develop those workers within it.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting topic, and it's something that we use a lot. We always have between 200 and 300 apprentices in our house here in Europe, in order to really have the skilled labor force available for the future. So we train our own staff, we build our own staff. That was very successful in the past, and we still stick to that, because we find it very fruitful for us, at least, that we have the right skill set of people with the right spirit available, because they went through that apprenticeship program for 3.5 years. Another company, we know them, and we know exactly where we can use exactly those people then. So that's a that we use since nearly the beginning of the company, and that we still drive that.
Yeah, fascinating. That's good. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of the time, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure as the year begins, you have a full plate, and I know you're doing this later in the evening due to your schedule. So we certainly appreciate that. Is there anything before we end that we haven't talked about that you might want to state about Zollner or the industry? Or
no, I think we touched nearly. That was a good 360-degree spin that we made around the industry. I think we touched a lot of interesting topics right now. So there's nothing to add from my end.
Very well, sir. Well, listen, then I just wish to thank you. I wish you a successful 2021. You know, I look forward to following the developments for Zollner and the industry, and within. And I'm hoping that by the second half of the year we can get on planes again and come over to Europe and industry live, if that is allowed. So again, Markus, thank you for your time today, sir, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks.
There, I stopped the recording.
Okay, perfect.
Well, Markus, thank you, sir. I appreciate you taking this late in the evening for me.
You're welcome, Eric.
And we will run this probably beginning of next week is the way it looks.
I'm fine with that.
Very good, sir. You did well. Thank you. Continued success.
Thank you, Eric.